Hey everyone, and welcome to the video. So in today's video we're going to be covering two topics. Do I think we're going to get a new Saints Row game? And just for the fun of it, do I want a new Saints Row game? So this video should be real fun, and I basically want to talk about all the concepts and all the things I think we could get alongside a possible sequel to this game, etc, etc. So it should be a really fun video, basically just going through everything and talking about just everything with updated thoughts, knowing how everything is basically played out for the reboot. So, do I think we're going to be getting a new Saints Row game? Now, this is a weird topic because it's still very early days. My initial thoughts, though, are I don't think we will, and here's why. I think Gearbox are going to pick up Volition and realise that the only IP they genuinely have right now that will bring them much of an income is Saints Row. They're going to look at that and go, wow, you guys are a one IP dev team. Now, that inherently isn't bad, but with Saints Row now being in quite a rocky foundation and not even necessarily being a guaranteed income source for Volition, we're basically in the case of, like, they have one IP, and that IP is probably not in the best state it's been in since its inception, really. The IP is definitely at its lowest and weakest, and I can just 100% see Gearbox basically going, look, you guys currently only have one IP under your belt that's actually going to bring us any money, and even that's not guaranteed. We want to try out some new stuff. On top of that, they also have a new studio, so I imagine that Gearbox are also going to partially just want to see what they can do. I imagine that they don't want to keep Volition as just, oh, we have Saints Row games now. Another issue you're going to have is Gearbox have to look at it a little bit like, where do you even go from here? The recent Saints Row game is not something people are going to want a sequel to, and the old Saints Row games, they've kind of been left in the dust at this point for a significant amount of time, and they themselves are not in a very good position either. Ending with Saints Row 4, it's not like you could just go and pick up a Saints Row 5 and make it nice and easy to make. It just wouldn't be easy to do, so the problem is, if they were to even make a Saints Row game, they would have to reboot, which, let's be honest, that is probably the most Saints Row thing I've ever heard, but it also just doesn't sound like a good idea. I could definitely see them calling it Saints Row rebooted though, or something lame. That's a very Saints Row thing to do. But yeah, the problem you really have is, if they were to do a Saints Row title, what would they even do? What, just a remaster? Remasters are cool, but eventually they're going to want to work on something new. And unfortunately, I don't know what new they could really do with Saints Row. The reboot flopped and the old series is done. And that is literally the case. The only thing I could really see them doing Saints Row-wise is maybe a prequel, or like a best-of game where it's just, I don't know, all the Saints Row characters in some weird sandbox, and it's not meant to be a good story that makes sense, it's just for fun. I don't know, some sort of Saints go back in time and try and stop all the mistakes they made along the way type shit, with the time machine or something. I mean, that'd be kind of fun, but basically what I'm getting at is there's nothing here where they could start a new series. It would literally just end up being a one-off game. Yeah, we could do a prequel, yeah, we could do a best-of game, but Saints Row is still going to be in the position of, where do you go from here a couple games down the line? And that is not a situation I think they're going to want to be in. Plus, Volition themselves clearly don't really want to make the typical Saints Row games anymore. This game is probably the most un-Saints Row yet. Even Saints Row 4 felt more like a Saints Row game. It's just very clear Volition want to do their own thing. I think Gearbox are going to want to do their own thing, and hopefully this means that Volition's next title is exactly what they want it to be, with all the resources they need and all the things they want. I'm hoping that basically Volition can finally make the game they really want to make, because I think that when they're making exactly what they want to make, they make their best work. You know, Saints Row 1, for example, and Saints Row 2, they clearly wanted to make Saints Row games because of how well they did. And then Saints Row 3 was a soft reboot just to kind of respond to the backlash, and then it slowly went from there. The point I'm making is, Saints Row is its own thing, but I think it needs to put it to rest for a little while. I'm not saying Saints Row has to be abandoned. Remasters, spin-off games, hell, I'd be happy with all of those. And hell, I promise you, okay, bring it on to the next topic here, I would love a new Saints Row game. But right now, my mentality is I just want Volition and Gearbox to do what they want to do, make the game they want to make, because I think that's exactly what we need. I think it's about time we stop trying to expect just another Saints Row game to come out the pipeline and disappoint everyone, and instead hope that Volition can make the titles they want to make, whether that be a new Red Faction, whether that be a brand new IP, etc, etc. I'd love for them to try the whole Zeus IP they had a while back. If you don't know what Zeus is, Godzilla has a really good video. It's a cancelled Volition game, and it sounded like badass, honestly. I just basically just want Volition to do the game they want to make, because at the end of the day, they're developers who I think will make the best game they can make when they're making exactly what they want to make, without the restrictions and confines of the IP's name. Saints Row had to be kinda Saints Row-ish, and for that reason, it doesn't feel unique in its own way, and it doesn't feel like a Saints Row game. It's this weird middle ground where basically, yeah, it's fun, and yeah, I love the game, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the reboot a lot, but It doesn't feel like a traditional Saints Row, and it doesn't feel unique enough to be its own thing. It just kind of feels washed out. So, I guess what I'm really getting at here is, Volition, they're going to want to make their own thing. Gearbox, they're going to want to make their own thing, and I don't think any of those things will be Saints Row. But I do think that we may see an outsourced remaster or remake of sorts. I feel like they're not going to just lose the Saints Row IP, because that thing will still bring money in, and it's almost guaranteed success if they go remaster route, because people like all the original games. Obviously some more than others, but yeah, I can see that happening. Plus, they can't totally abandon Saints Row, because they're currently working on how to basically sort out the new Saints Row 2 patch and stuff. So, Saints Row will always be fresh in their minds, and I'm sure that they're going to want to do something of some sorts. Whether that be the patch, or the remaster, or something else. The point I'm making is, I don't think Saints Row will go silent, but I think we could do without some mainline entries for a while, whilst Volition really decide what they want to be as a dev team. They should put their creativity first, and not try and feel restricted by having to make another Saints Row game. Gearbox will give them resources, they're a brand new team, they're going to want to let them thrive. And I won't lie, I have hope for Gearbox. Gearbox, they may not put out the best games, but I think they put out half-decent titles very consistently. Yeah, they've got some weaker games than others. Borderlands 3, for example, it's not the best game in the world, but it's decent enough, and I feel like they're going to at least give them the resources and budget they have to basically make something special, and I think that that's what it really comes down to. Hopefully Gearbox can help Volition make something special. Now, to just kind of go back onto what I would want. Now look, the Saints Row fanboy in me obviously is going, man, imagine if we got a new Saints Row game. You know, whether it's a remake, a prequel, a remaster, etc, etc. Of course, I would love that, and I'm sure you guys would too. But at the same time, I don't think it's really what I want right now. We have a Saints Row game, and there's still DLC coming out, so I know that this is still early days to talk about things, but Saints Row, I think it needs a break, even though it's just come back. We had this sort of like topic on stream yesterday, talking about, oh, Saints Row needs a break, and someone was like, well, it had a break for like 10 years since it got out of hell, and it's like, well, it did, but it didn't really. It had reports, it had remasters, it had Switch ports, it had, like, Agents of Mayhem have a ton of references. Saints Row never really went dormant, it just didn't have a mainline entry. You know, it still had tons of stuff kind of come out, and Saints Row was very much still at the top of our minds. Like, Saints Row was still just a thing that we were all kind of waiting on. Plus, they also announced the Saints Row, like, being in development a while back. So, yeah, it's kind of just like Saints Row never really went quiet. It just didn't have a big mainline release. And I don't think that's what we need. What we need, in my mind, is, honestly, I would say to maybe put, like, a remake or a remaster out, as well as the PC patch. That way, the last Saints Row wasn't quite so hurtful, and, you know, people could at least play a newer Saints Row game and have some love for it, whether it even be just a 4 remaster or something, in comparison to, like, anything else. And then with the Saints Row 2 patch being out, that'd be that kind of done. I think after that, I'd like Saints Row to kind of retire for a little bit, let them work on something else, let them be real creative, and honestly just make the game they want to make, like I was saying. And that's really what I want. I just want Volition to make the game they want to make, because I feel like that's when they make the best work, and hopefully they have the resources, budget, and scope correct this time, and hopefully it's a memorable experience, but I don't necessarily need that experience to be Saints Row, as long as it's fun. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I basically just don't mind either way. If we get a new Saints Row game, I'd be cool with it, I'd be happy, but I do think it'd be nice to see Volition really try something else and put creativity first, and that's something that me, as a fan, would personally love to see. You know, a new Volition game with a completely different concept sounds really exciting to me, and I think it's about time we try and get a new IP from Volition that people can fall in love with, opposed to trying to rehash an IP and turn it into something it's not. You know, I love the reboot, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it doesn't exactly feel like Saints Row, and I think it'd be nice for them to do something and not have to worry about it feeling like Saints Row. They don't have to bring the old fans along, and they just can kind of make their own thing. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.